All right, if you haven't heard already, Kevin Hart was in a pretty severe car accident. So we're going to cover his injuries, some details of the accident that we know, things that are up in the air, and some details about the car you probably don't know yet. If you're new here, this is Real Steel Cars, and if you like talking about the automotive news, trends, and just talking about what's going on in the automotive world in general, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell notification so you don't miss any new videos. Alright, so let's start with the basics. We know Kevin Hart is in pretty major condition. He has 3 spinal fractures after a major car accident. Now, he has had multiple surgeries already and is said to have a very long rehab road ahead of him. The thing about this accident is he was not the one driving. Now, his friend Jared and his fiance Rebecca were both with him. Jared was actually the one driving. Now, Jared also has major injuries. We don't know what they are, and his fiance Rebecca walked away with minor injuries. The 911 call that came in around 1 o'clock on Labor Day weekend said that the car went down into a ditch, the roof was caved in, and trapping the front passengers. Now, there wasn't really anything said upon the 911 call about the third passenger until later. The interesting part about this was that no alcohol was involved whatsoever, which I know a lot of people would speculate it was going to be the issue, but there wasn't. They did a blood alcohol test and everything came out clean. Nobody was drinking, so we can rule alcohol out of this equation. Now, let's talk about the car itself. The 1970 Cuda in question is a present Kevin bought for himself for his 40th birthday. This car was built by a company named Speedkore. Now, they are famous for building over-the-top cars. This one, a pretty good example of it, actually. Now, this car had, according to many, a Hellcat engine swap. After further investigation, Motor Trend had found out that it wasn't a Hellcat motor, it was actually a Demon motor. So, a supercharged motor putting out 840 horsepower. That's a lot of power in a car from 1970. Now, obviously, they also upgraded the suspension, they upgraded the wheels and tires, so a lot of things were done in preparation for this motor, for the suspension and overall car to handle it. The problem is, no matter how much suspension work you do to a car that old, you don't have the stability control or traction control systems that you would in a modern vehicle. If you've ever driven a Hellcat and taken the traction control off, you know that that thing will get squirrely fast. Traction is very limited as it is. Now, to put it into a car that never had stability control or traction control is going to take an experienced driver. Now, I don't know of Jared's driving history or what he was capable of doing, but it was reported that they were doing burnouts prior to the accident. You're in a fast car, you're going to do burnouts. That's not a thing. But was his driving contributed to the accident? That's what we don't know. The one thing that the Highway Patrol is putting an emphasis on is that the car had a third passenger, but the car is converted to a 2-seater. There was no back seat. So the fact that she had no seatbelt and was not properly strapped into the car, as the Highway Patrol says, there is a very large surprise that she's the one that walked away with minor injuries. Now, Hellcat engine swaps and stuff are done in old classic cars like that all the time. Most of the time they're done in drag car applications, so traction control and stuff isn't really that big of a concern because they're just going to put big slicks on it and run it down the track for the fastest time. But this thing was a fully customized street car. So the question that the Highway Patrol and investigators are really looking into was, should have Speedkore implemented some sort of traction control or speed sensors into the car to help make it more controllable and streetable? Now, there is ways to do this. GM has speed sensors that are widely used in these type of conversions. But for some reason, they said for a Chrysler powertrain, there was no adaptabilities because of, quote, incompatible output pulses. So these things would have to be manufactured from scratch. Now, Hellcat swaps, again, I said are done all the time, but without these features, how controllable is 840 horsepower on a street car? Now, we don't know a whole lot about the suspension on the car other than the fact that Speedkore said it was upgraded to handle the engine swap. We don't really know what that means, but what we do know is there was no traction control, so it's going to take an experienced driver to handle that kind of power on the street, especially on a twisty road like Mulholland Drive. Now, Kevin Hart had just finished filming the second Jumanji movie and another movie called Fatherhood. There were a few other movies lined up, but obviously they're going to have to put on hold as he's going to have a very long recovery ahead of him. Physical rehab, they said, could take several weeks up to several months. Hopefully it doesn't take that long and he has a fast recovery. So the accident is still under investigation. This is all we know at this time. What do you think happened? My personal thoughts are, I don't believe Jarrett was used to that kind of power. Maybe he took a turn too quick and it stepped out on him. Personally, I feel like it's probably driver experience that was kind of playing a factor in this, or should I say a lack of driving experience. So he probably got a little overzealous. The road was dark, he lost control, and that's just where I think happened. What do you think? I'm going to chalk it up to driver error. So we're just got to see what happens as the investigation goes on and what happens with Kevin Hart's recovery. Until then, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell notification, and I'll catch you next time.